You are lying flat on your back. It's the middle of the night. Your spine is straight. Your arms are out, your mouth is open. And you are completely gloriously unconscious. This is normal. This is what sleep looks like. This is what every mattress ad, every hotel, every pillow with a 47-step memory foam patent has trained you to believe is the one correct way for a human body to power down. Now I want you to imagine telling that to someone from 400 years ago. They would look at you like you'd lost your mind. Because for an enormous chunk of human history, lying down flat to sleep, the thing you do every single night, without a second thought, was not the default. It wasn't even necessarily the goal. A staggering number of our ancestors slept propped up, half sitting, reclined against bolsters, wedged into short wooden boxes, leaning back at an angle that would absolutely wreck your neck today. And the deeper you dig into this, the stranger it gets. Because the question stops being how do they sleep and becomes something much weirder. Why would a human being choose to sleep sitting up? That's the story today, not a myth, not a fun fact you half remember from somewhere. A genuine, documented, slowly unraveling historical mystery about the single, most ordinary thing you will do tonight. And by the end of this, I promise you're going to look at your own bed differently. Let's start with the thing nobody tells you about beds. The flat, horizontal, lie-down and sprawl bed that you own, that's new. That's a modern luxury. For most of human history, the bed was not a guaranteed object. It was a pile of straw, a mat on a dirt floor, a shared platform, a bench, a corner. And in a shocking number of those situations, lying fully flat was either uncomfortable, dangerous, or just not how it was done. Walk into a museum that's preserved a genuine medieval European home, and one of the first things that confuses people is the beds. They're short, disturbingly short. Tourists look at them and go, wow, people back then were tiny. Except no. People in the medieval period were not that small. Skeletal evidence shows the average height wasn't dramatically different from ours. A medieval adult would not fit into one of those beds, lying flat any more than you would. So if the people weren't tiny, why were the beds so short? The answer, argued by serious historians, is almost absurdly simple. The beds were short because people weren't lying flat in them. They were sleeping propped up, half sitting, leaning back against a mound of pillows and bolsters, their torso raised, their body folded into a shape that fit a shorter frame just fine. The bed wasn't built wrong. We've just been reading it wrong for centuries. Now, I'll be honest with you, there are historians who push back on this. Some argue the beds look short because of how the bedding was stacked, or measurement quirks, or mattresses that extended beyond the visible frame. This is a real debate, but here's what's not in dispute. The semi-upright sleeping position was real, widespread, documented, and it lasted for a very long time. So the question gets sharper. Not did they do it, but why? And this is where the story splits open. Because there are multiple explanations. And the genuinely fascinating thing is that they might all be true at once. Explanation 1. The body position wasn't a habit. It was a medical instruction. Here's a fact the original history goes right past. In medieval and Renaissance Europe, physicians prescribed upright sleep. This wasn't folk wisdom. It was written doctrine. The dominant medical framework of the era was Galenic medicine, inherited from the ancient Greek physician Galen, who believed the body was governed by 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. And under Galenic theory, lying flat during sleep was considered genuinely dangerous. It was believed that horizontal sleep caused the humors to pool and stagnate, particularly phlegm flooding the brain, suppressing vital heat and inviting disease. The prescription? Sleep elevated. Physicians from 13th century Italian medical schools at the first universities in Europe taught that the correct sleeping posture was reclined, torso raised, head and chest above the stomach. Not just for the sick, for everyone, as a matter of maintenance. This isn't speculation. These instructions survive in manuscripts. Medical texts distributed across medieval Europe, read by physicians who treated kings, merchants, monks, and anyone with enough money to see a doctor, all said the same thing. Do not sleep flat. Sleeping flat makes you ill. When culture, architecture, and medical authority all point in the same direction as the behavior sticks. And for several hundred years it did. Explanation 2. The real threat wasn't a predator. It was the person sleeping next to you. Modern discussions of ancient sleep always frame the danger as external. Wild animals, raiding tribes, things lurking in the dark. But there's a threat that gets almost no attention. And for much of human history, it was more statistically likely than any predator. Fire. Open fire was the only source of heat, light, and cooked food for the vast majority of human existence. An open fire inside an enclosed space kills through 2 mechanisms: burns and carbon monoxide. Both happen fastest to someone who is deeply, flatly unconscious. Forensic analysis of fire deaths, both ancient and modern, consistently shows the same pattern. The people who survive fires are those who were in a lighter, more alert state of sleep. The people who don't survive are those in the deepest stage of unconsciousness, lying flat, fully committed to the horizontal position. There's also a practical issue with flat sleep near Fire that nobody talks about, rolling. A sleeping human lying flat on a soft surface will shift, turn and drift during the night. In a world where fire is 3 feet away and there's no fire guard, no grate, no safety barrier, rolling while unconscious isn't just uncomfortable. It's fatal. A propped, semi-upright sleeper doesn't roll the same way. The body's center of gravity works against it. You stay roughly where you were placed. This isn't a modern theory imposed on the past. Accounts from medieval and early modern households describe enormous anxiety around fire and sleeping children. The propped sleeping posture kept bodies stationary. It kept them above the cold floor, and it kept them in a lighter sleep state. Exactly the state where a crackle, a smell, a shift in the room's heat might wake you in time. Sleeping upright wasn't just thermal management. It was fire safety, in an era where fire was everywhere and alarms didn't exist. Explanation 3. And this is the one that goes all the way back to before beds. Before houses, before any of it. In 2018, researchers studying the sleep habits of wild chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, published findings that quietly reframed the entire conversation. Chimpanzees build sleeping platforms. Every night they construct fresh nests in the trees using branches and leaves, and they sleep in them elevated above the ground, above the predators and parasites that move along the forest floor at night. The platforms are engineered to be stable and firm. Chimps consistently prefer harder, sleeping surfaces over soft ones when given a choice, because a firm platform holds position and doesn't collapse under a shifting body. But here's the detail that matters. Chimps don't sprawl flat. They sleep curled, folded, in a posture that keeps the body compact. And crucially, as they sleep high. Now trace that behavior backward into the hominid lineage, and forward into early modern humans, and a pattern starts to emerge. The deep ancestral preference wasn't flat and low. It was elevated and compact. Separate research on the Hadza, one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer populations, living in Tanzania in conditions closer to our evolutionary past than almost anywhere on Earth, found that Hadza sleepers don't sleep in open, flat positions either. They sleep close together, often semi-reclined around or near fire, with sleeping group members, naturally falling in and out of wakefulness throughout the night, creating what researchers described as an accidental sentinel system. Almost never is the entire group fully unconscious at the same time. The flat, alone, fully horizontal, completely switched off sleep, the one you're about to have tonight, might be the single most architecturally unusual thing our species has ever done with the dark. And now we need to talk about the other thing most histories of this topic miss entirely, because it wasn't just the position that was different. It was the shape of the night itself. His name is A. Roger E. Kirk. He's a historian at Virginia Tech, and in 2005, he published a book that dropped a bombshell, one he'd found buried in hundreds of old documents, diaries, court records, medical texts, prayers. Over and over across centuries of sources, he kept finding the same 2 phrases, first sleep and second sleep. What E. Kirch realized is that for most of pre-industrial history, people didn't sleep in one solid 8-hour block. They slept in 2. You'd go to bed after dark, sleep for a few hours, that's your first sleep, then naturally wake around midnight. Not in panic, not with dread, just awake. People used that gap. They prayed, they talked, they tended the fire, they reflected on dreams while the dreams were still fresh, and then, an hour or 2 later, they'd drift back into their second sleep until dawn. 2 sleeps, with a calm, wakeful island between them. And then it vanished. As candles got cheaper, as gas lamps lit up cities, as the electric bulb finally conquered the dark, the night got shorter. The 2-sleep pattern got squeezed out. Within a few generations, we forgot it had ever existed. The phrases dropped from the language entirely. But here's where it gets interesting. That's a historian working from documents. What does the actual science say? In the early 1990s, a researcher at the National Institute of Mental Health named Thomas Weir ran an experiment. He took volunteers and plunged them into 14 hours of darkness, every night for a month, the way a human in winter before electric light would have experienced it. After a few weeks, their sleep changed. It split. Modern people with modern brains spontaneously rediscovered the exact 2-sleep pattern Ekirch found in 17th century diaries. They woke in the middle of the night into a calm, meditative state, elevated prolactin, low anxiety, quiet. The 2-sleep night isn't a historical artifact. It might be the rhythm your body still wants, the one electricity papered over. You've been doing it wrong, possibly your entire life. So has nearly everyone you know, so now place it all together. A position that physicians prescribed for centuries. A posture that reduced fire risk in a world where fire was everywhere. A compact, elevated sleeping shape inherited from the same ancestral line as the chimps, who still build tree platforms tonight. A night that was never one continuous block, but 2 with an island of quiet wakefulness in between. That is sleep for most of human history. Propped, elevated, communal, watchful, never fully under, never fully gone. And the flat, 8-hour, alone in a dark room, dead to the world sleep, you think of as natural. The one the mattress industry sells as your birthright? That's the strange one. That's the experiment. That's the brand new, historically bizarre thing our species started doing roughly 5 minutes ago, evolutionarily speaking. Once we built walls thick enough, locks strong enough, lights that could hold the dark at arm's length through the whole night. So tonight, when you climb into your bed, your big, soft, flat, gloriously horizontal bed, in your warm room behind your locked door with no fire to tend and no second sleep waiting at midnight, I want you to notice it. Just for a second. You're about to do something almost none of your ancestors ever could. You're going to lie down completely flat, close your eyes, and trust the world entirely. It feels like the most natural thing in the world. It might be one of the least natural things we've ever done.